You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. Yes, we are back. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each week, our team discusses news and events from this past week, as well as preview the week ahead, covering Mexico-based promotions and top independents, along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are also available on all major podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbay, iHeartRadio, and Speaker. My name is Miranda Morales, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, and I'm going to bring in the rest of the team. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Miranda. How's it going for you?
I'm fantastic. Very happy to be here. Very happy to be joining you. And the third member of this trio's team is who?
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 It is the one and only Brendan Barr.
That's who.
It's me. How we all doing? I was just talking to Dusty, commenting on how I'm morbidly curious about this death match that AEW is doing this weekend. So I've got this weird energy going on right now.
Right? No, I feel that's totally appropriate. I was talking to, on another show about it, and it's like barbed wire, what is it? How are they going to barbed wire explosive death match? Something to that capacity. Exploding barbed wire death match.
Yes. As a tape trader from back in the day, I had a bunch of Onita matches that had that, so that's why it's part of this weird energy, because I used to watch them, but now I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what that's going to look like, and that's going to be happening this weekend at AEW Revolution. Speaking of AEW, they've been getting some interesting coverage in the press due to the Wrestling Observer newsletter end of year awards. And I'm going to have Brendan kind of lead this part of the conversation because it's fascinating. We'll all be talking about it, but I mean, if you don't, most wrestling fans are in the know about the Wrestling Observer newsletter and their end of year awards. These are voted by the subscribers to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and yeah, very interesting picks.
Yeah, we know that if it's a paid subscription, you're gonna have people that like a certain thing. Like, I mean, that's where it is. I didn't vote on the Wrestling Observer newsletter because I haven't paid for it for many years at this point. Back when they shifted more towards MMA, I was like, yeah, I don't need to spend that money anymore. I got other things I can do. Give me that candy bar. But so, and a lot of the time, because people are leading the charge, you're gonna get that same kind of energy. And Uncle Dave, as I like to call him, I don't know if you guys like to call him that, is very pro Kenny Omega and AEW. So AEW got a lot of awards out of this. They got like something like Show of the Year. They got the Phoenix got Mexican Performer of the Year, even though he only performed 5 matches in Mexico, and then everything else was in AEW because 2020. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Obviously, for them that counts. I don't know that's how I would have voted. I mean, Laredo Kid had more matches in there. Mm-hmm. A bunch of other people we talk about a lot on the show. But
Yeah. I think a lot of people in
and
oh, go ahead,
I
sorry.
know, do it, do
I think a
your
lot of
thing.
people in
I'll come
general
back.
just don't have the exposure
Yeah.
to a lot of Phoenix's other work or his,
Yeah.
or Laredo Kid, for example. People that you have to seek out. The number of fans that only relate to what they see on television each week
Mm-hmm.
is much larger than we think. And
Yeah.
so it's a different thing. And it's not necessarily like a phobia. It's just like a ill ease of access to the lucha content, and I think that
Yeah.
it's having to seek it out limits it so much in these awards and rankings.
Well, especially in a primarily English-speaking
Mm-hmm.
community like the Wrestling Observer Network. Yeah.
I mean, he was also voted best flying wrestler as well. So I think, that is true in and of itself, but I think it does lead to your point, both of your points, where I think that there's just a limitation on visibility and who they know. So I feel like, in a good way for Rey Fénix, he's getting more popular and synonymous here in the United States with Lucha Libre. But when you look at something that's, supposed to be, I guess, a little bit more objective, it does mean that people are just going to automatically think of Rey Fénix because that's the luchador that they know of.
Yes.
But to a point we've talked about before, luchador previous to this year, for the last 15, 20 years, if you said luchador, it would have been Rey Mysterio.
Mm-hmm.
Even if so, it's a cool sign. It's showing that the sport is evolving, and Phoenix and Pentagon are much more the faces of what the Americans that only watch network television are thinking of when they think about Lucha Libre. So, that's my silver lining there.
Well, and also Kenny Omega couldn't have had the year he had without Phoenix. That match was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So,
you bring up a great point there.
Yeah.
I
he was an
didn't think
integral
about
part
looking
of
at
that.
Yeah. I didn't think about looking at that. That match did not get their match of the year though, right? They voted
correct.
Yeah. I just saw the haze of Kenny Omega winning at that point and didn't really read too closely, but I should have looked to see if that was one of them.
Match of the year was from Revolution last year, Kenny Omega and Adam Page versus the Young Bucks, which, it was a good match, but I don't know that it was better than Kenny Omega Laredo Kid.
We on this show are looking at things differently than they are. Like that match had a lot of storyline that paid off things that fans of Kenny Omega and fans of Being the Elite wanted to see. So I can see that having more emotional impact with people. But it just wasn't the pure magic that we got with Laredo Kid and Kenny Omega, where you had two technical wrestlers, and the basic storyline is I want to prove to you that I'm the guy on both sides. So just different things you want out of matches. I can't fault a fan for liking that other match more because there's a lot of things that were for them in that match.
Yeah. Kind of overall, there just seemed to be some interesting picks. One of the ones that stood out to me was Feud of the Year, which is listed as Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. Which is it's good, but when I think about Feud of the Year, I don't think of it as Feud of the Year.
No.
It is something that happened for kind of a blip of time. Great promos by Eddie Kingston. He was also awarded interview best on interviews. And I do think that he was able to shine in that promo and interview work in AEW back in 2020. That did happen, but I feel like Feud, out of all it's just a weird choice.
Well, but you have to look at the fact that 2020 was kind of a weird year. We had pre-pandemic, we had the starts of some really great feuds that then had to fizzle and just went nowhere. And then as a result, you had like WWE just hot spotting the Mysterios and Seth Rollins over and over again because they didn't know how long lockdown was going to last.
Right.
So, and then anything pre-lockdown was so far away, people probably forgot about that actually fun and interesting stuff that was going on beforehand. So, again, that's just a weird one for me because I agree it's a great feud. But I can't instantly think of something that I thought was better in 2020 because I instead am on all the zany things they did with lockdown and stuff.
Yeah. Well, in this list, some people have also called it that it's not only biased towards AEW as far as leaning heavily their way, but it's also very anti-WWE.
Yeah. They had worst promotion of the year, worst gimmick of the year. Their worst gimmick of the year I can't argue with, although it's not really a gimmick. It's a shitty thing to do, which was firing talent and people.
Yes.
To save money during their biggest profit-making year on record. Like, that's like cartoon evil there. Like, I mean,
Villainy.
I can see like Vince McMahon sitting in Skeletor's chair at this point, just saying like, fire them, fire half of them.
I can see it, yeah. And he's got the Ram's head staff, yeah, it
Yep.
makes sense.
Triple H got that for him. The other weird one I picked up on that I'm a little surprised that you didn't mention, Miranda, because I know how much you love this guy, but Rookie of the Year went to Pat McAfee.
I mean, define love this guy because like I respect his work. However, yeah, like the fact that Rookie of the Year goes to someone who is not a wrestler. I mean, impressive turnout in War Games. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Only one match last year as well.
One match. And I mean, like, I just remember you just being bristling at him existing, and a lot of people just hated him. He had what I viewed as go home heat. Like, people just didn't want to see him. And somehow that came out as Rookie of the Year. And I wanted to swing this back around for Lucha related products there. Raquel Gonzalez made her debut as this character in this entity in February of 2020. Dominic Mysterio had the most impressive debut any wrestler in WWE can get.
Rage.
But I mean, and some of that may just be related to what you were mentioning earlier. There's a little more anti-WWE sentiment in readers of the network, but that's their choices. And I can't argue that WWE doesn't deserve some harsh criticism. So maybe if they overlook them once in a while, that's what you get for, just not being that good the rest of the year.
Well, Brendan, while you're at it, why don't you guide us through the road back to shows? I know you have some pretty interesting news and pretty hot topics to go through for this week's road back to shows.
Road back to shows is packed with crazy stuff this week. So we're going to start right where I always start. Mexico City is orange. They are for sure orange by the time you're hearing this, and will probably stay orange, whether they deserve to or not. But that's a whole other thing. Movie theaters and museums can be open at 20% capacity, but they're going to close like 7 or 8. So they're closing up early, sending people home. I don't fully understand the logic behind that. If you're going to let people be out in public, why do they have to like keep the hours of a 10-year-old? But, I'm not a city planner, so I don't know. But yeah, Mexico City is orange. There are plans, but nothing has happened yet for maybe having AAA or CMLL do shows now without fans for a little while until things get a little more settled down. But we'll see how that plays out because AAA has certainly demonstrated they want to have a little more safety awareness for their wrestlers. and CMLL seems to have a system going with closed door shows. So I think what they're going to want to do is do closed door shows until they can be at closer to 80 to 100%. And, cause that's where they make their money, is when they can have big gates. So we'll see. Speaking of making their money in big gates, Barr the Crash is still not going to be making money. They have, that facility that I talked about last week is closed for 30 days. The government has put signs on the door, and everything's basically, it's closed down for any sort of activity. So my understanding is that there was also a practice facility for the Crash. So hopefully they have somewhere else with a ring that they can do practice, because 30 days is a long time without bumping. You'll get real sore the first time you hit a ring after 30 days off. They did have an extra long press conference that I sadly had to make Miranda listen to, because my Spanish is still not very good. So did they say anything of note or interest, Miranda, in that long ramble?
Yeah, it was long, and let's be honest, I didn't go through all of it, but I did get the gist as far as really the beginning of the press conferences, explaining why their previous event got closed down and trying to clear up from their perspective why. And they did have some documentation, though they had it with them, but they didn't necessarily show it for viewing as to why they got closed down, and clearing some of that up. So the team there did state that they did get permission to run at 30% capacity for the event. And that there was some issues with the fact that 30% was slightly exceeded, because they did have slightly more than 30%. And this is just their words.
Yeah.
They did also start mentioning that there was things what they consider outside of their control, quote unquote, as to some of the COVID related issues or social distancing measures that weren't necessarily followed. They stated that fans started to move chairs, that the chairs were set up in a social distance manner, but fans started to move them themselves, and then also you started to have fans remove their masks for, drinking and eating. And I don't remember if it was exactly the commission, but some kind of authority figure there did want them to kick out the fans and kind of finish the show without fans. And Crash said, no, we want to keep the fans here. We think that we can continue this show with fans. So they were given permission to finish, but ultimately what ended up being the issue is that there was some kind of licensing issue that ended up being the final nail in the coffin to why they were shut down. So apparently they were trying to clear up that no, it wasn't that we had violated any COVID related measures, even though yes, they were slightly above 30% capacity, and yes, fans were not observing those measures. It was technically some kind of license issue that led for them to have to close that show, had to stop the show. And it kind of aligns with what you mentioned with, the facility itself being closed for 30 days. So that is the gist of what I got from it. So it was a little bit of, yes, we did these things, but it's not entirely our fault.
Well, I mean, they're never going to hear me say this, but I saw the footage, and there's no way they were just a little bit above 30% capacity. Yeah. They were shoved in that facility, and people. I mean, the mask not being on, I understood, because you can't do a lucha show without food and beer, so the fans are going to do what the fans are going to do, but there was a lot more. There was a lot of people in that facility. Thank you for doing that for me. I appreciate that. It was actually very helpful. So the official date looks like March 21st will be the day that they're allowed to do shows. So it'll probably be 3 or 4 days after that, because if I remember right, that's like the middle of the week, and like to do weekend shows. I will probably report on it. I may or may not do it covered in the Indie Roundup because, as we've established, we're not covering an Indie Roundup if you can't be safe. So you're
Brendan
on
is
my
the
list
law.
right now, guys.
Marshall Brendan.
But
Yeah.
speaking of people that have the rights to do this, Lucha Libre training resumed in Chetumal after Quintana Roo reached yellow light status. So they're all the way past orange. They're into yellow. That means they're going to start training now. I'm willing to bet that their plan is that they're going to do training and hopefully they stay at yellow for the 3 weeks that it takes to go to green and then do shows when they go to green. That would be the sensible plan. I will keep my ears open for that because we've proven many times that wrestling shows don't always take the sensible route. Sometimes they take the fun route. So, but I'm optimistic on that because I haven't heard anything about any secret shows in that area, and they're already at yellow, so the work is mostly done. And speaking of returning, this week on YouTube and other social media, the NWA started creeping back in, and they had a big announcement today while we're recording, or before we recorded, that they're going to be back with Power the week or the Thursday after their pay-per-view. So Back for the Attack is scheduled for March 21st, and then the shows will be on the 23rd on Fight Network, 6:05 Eastern, which is, kind of an NWA tradition at this point. And so we were big fans of the NWA before in the early parts of 2020. They were on great momentum. They have lost a few wrestlers, but I believe Thunder Rosa is still officially on their roster. I saw her face in the promo piece. And there's definitely a few other wrestlers that will be exciting to see, so keep an ear open for that. Also, the Thunder Studios that they were using for Primetime Live and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood seems to have already started being used for at least Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which means probably more things. And with the NWA returning, we might see more Primetime Live in the near future.
Yeah.
And then, so this is not COVID related, but it's always interesting. Vampiro did some more interviews. He's doing more press stuff. He said in an interview that he was released from AAA by text over WhatsApp. So here's the quote. "One day they told me Conan is already working in the company and he will be in charge of your position. And then they fired me on WhatsApp. They told me that's it. Thank you very much. And we are not going to take care of you anymore." It's kind of an interesting situation. It's actually enough wrestling business stuff that it might be pretty true.
Yeah.
I mean, famously wrestlers have been fired over voicemail, so why not over WhatsApp, which is way more popular than voicemail ever was.
Yeah.
But
and very popular internationally
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Internationally, very, because you can use it pretty much anywhere in the world.
He also made some mention of his Parkinson's diagnosis, and I bring that up more because I expect that the Mass Mats and Mayhem interview that we're going to hear at Expo Lucha may bring up one or both of these things. So I was bringing this up because, hey, Expo Lucha's coming and there's going to be a Vampiro interview, and this is interesting stuff. I'd love to hear more on this being fired over WhatsApp story if that's something that they throw in there. So if you guys are listening and you have time to sneak in an extra question or two, you got some good stuff to work with right now. And then another non-COVID thing, but kind of awesome, Republic of Lucha is scheduled to open March 5th. This is the Lucha Bros own shop. It's going to be on 1020 Mission Suite in Pasadena, California. They're focusing on a big to-do in the store, and they're going to have autograph signings from the Lucha Bros, and I think they've alluded to other wrestlers being there, but don't want to give names because it's the business, and you never know who's going to be able to make it and who's going to have to cancel last minute. It's very exciting stuff. They will be opening an online version of the store in the future, but at this time, at the moment of this grand opening on the 5th, they're focusing on in-store, although you will have the chance to buy items ahead of time for virtual autographs as well, which will be part of the in-store opening. And then, unfortunately, I'm going to end this segment on not my favorite note. At Lucha Libre Volcanica, they posted over the weekend that the wrestler who went by the name Joker, he came up several times a year to work with us from Mexico, had passed away. I don't have a lot of details on the conditions surrounding that. He was not an old man, so this was sudden and unexpected for most of us. He was kind of an older brother who would bring back stories about what life in Mexico was like, and what how being a luchador was different in Seattle, where we're at here, than where he came from, and most people looked up to him like an older brother. So it was very sad to hear about the passing of Joker. I just wanted to take a moment to say that we're going to miss you at the shows up here, and thank you for all the happy memories you gave us in the time you were able to be up here.
Yeah.
And that's the road back to shows. You might suspect I don't have a lot for the indie roundup because I'm being way more fussy about things that are going on. I couldn't find the continuation of my Lucha time that I've been covering, so I'm going to leave that alone, and if I find that I missed an episode, I'll just roll it all into the other one. Coastal Championship Wrestling put up their new episode, and it does have an appearance from Cage on it. So, like, if you are sadly needing a Lucha fix right now, there's I'm not going to tell you where because he's not on the listed card, so you have to wait for him to show up. But he shows up and does impressive Cage things. So go over to Coastal Championship Wrestling's YouTube channel, watch their Bash at the Bar, I believe it's called. It's the one that went up this week. And wait for Cage to make a special appearance. You will not be sorry. And that's my indie roundup too. So there we go.
Thank you, Brennan, as always, for the road back to shows and the indie roundup. Up next, we're going to kick it to Denise Salcedo with this week's Lucha Central.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live is Wrestle Boss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's straight out of the bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez, as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Mask Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
And as always, a huge thank you to Denise Salcedo, who lets us know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network with Lucha Central Central. Up next, Dusty, he's going to kick it off and let us know what happened this week on WWE SmackDown and Raw.
Yeah, well, with WWE, as long as you don't expect much, they will not let you down. And, I mean, like...
I love how you preface this. It's like, oh
man, they let us down pretty much in every way this week. On SmackDown, we had Rey and Dominic Mysterio versus Chad Gable and Otis. This match, it was not good. I was not a fan of this match, although it might have been the most respectful squash match I've ever seen. They let the Mysterios get their stuff in first, but this was not good. Like, it was not good. I don't understand the point. It was, it just felt...
The other positive I got out of this, unlike the previous match, Gable and Otis were clearly heels this whole time.
Yes,
there was no
I mean, there's more definitive. And it's also easier to do that with the Mysterios. They're super babyface. Like, I think anyone, even, and maybe that was the right thing to do too, kind of re-emphasize Gable and Otis turning or being heels by going up against some of the biggest baby faces in the entire company.
People just love to cheer Rey Mysterio and the mask and everything next with the kid. And like on that, some kind of unspoken level with children. So it's really a good way to get big heat with viewers, is to have people beat up on Rey and Dominic Mysterio. And so, maybe...
And now it's father-son tag team too,
Yeah, I'm hoping it's building to something. Like, you can't always get what you want, especially with wrestling. And so a lot of times you just kind of have to hope for the best. But with WWE, like I say, they always seem to let us down. So we'll see. Then we had Monday Night Raw, and after last week's fantastic match between Angel and Damian Priest with Bad Bunny, this week we got Elias with against Damian Priest with Bad Bunny.
Oh,
and
God.
And it makes sense on paper, like musician versus musician.
Mm-hmm.
But wow,
how
do you follow up that match with Angel Garza with this? Like,
right?
This is terrible. It was slow. It never had a good rhythm between the competitors. It just dragged. It too felt largely pointless. And I just wasn't sure what was going on here. Like, and it went forever. Like 15 minutes. Like, they never give a match 15 minutes. And they gave Elias versus Damian Priest 15 minutes. Like,
I have a theory on this. It's a very selfish theory. when Elias came here to Seattle, we booed him for 7.5 minutes.
Yeah,
So I think
very big booing session.
I think ever since then, he's just like, I need extra time now because they're just Seattle took all my time. So I think that's what it is. He's just being bratty about us.
It could be. I don't know. And it wasn't just that it was bad, because it was a bad match. But last week's match with Angel Garza was really good.
It was so good. And I feel like that's the direction they need to go in for WrestleMania, because, the big move that happened was that Miz lost the WWE Championship to Bobby Lashley. So that frees him back up to face against Bad Bunny and say, maybe if there's a trio element to it, and it's hard to say at this time too, because I think apparently John Morrison may be out on injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know how long the injury is going to last.
Yeah.
But he is injured.
You could have had, John Morrison, The Miz, Angel Garza versus, Damian Priest, Bad Bunny, and, anybody, say like a Booker T or whatever. So, I mean, like that you always knew that that's the direction they were going to go in, and it still looks like it. But Angel Garza is a much better fit, and even just continuing that storyline makes more sense as they head to WrestleMania than doing this random ass stuff with Elias.
It also kind of like reminds me a little bit of Bret Hart. They said you could put Bret Hart with anybody and he would have a great match, and I feel like that might be Angel Garza's position now in the company. He's the guy you send out to have a good match, no matter who it is. And
places to be.
Yeah, I mean he's really good, and the silver lining in this is that after this Elias match, like they're gonna have to decide they want Garza. Like how can they?
Skeletor's to sit on his throne and be like, no, put it in a three-way with this man, and then add Baron Corbin too.
Oh,
yeah. Well, we got something almost that weird with Retribution, and they're up next. We had Lucha House Party with Riddle versus Retribution and Ali. It started with Lucha House Party teaming with Riddle against Mace, T-Bar, and Slapjack from Retribution. And after some fighting between Riddle and I believe T-Bar, Lindsay was tagged in and put the hurt down on Slapjack. Then tagged in Grand Metalik for some amazing work, with Metalik riding on Lindsay's shoulders and making a dive for a pin. It was incredible. Afterwards, Ali lost his damn mind and demanded a match with Riddle that he went on to win, and it left many of us thinking about what could have been instead of what we got. Like, it too was not a good match. I don't know what's going on in WWE this week, but we did not get anything good for Lucha fans. Like, it was just... And I've been sick of Retribution since they were putting the lights out on Andrade and Angel back in the summer. I mean, like it felt like it jumped the shark then. Yeah. And that was before we knew their terrible names. And like,
when you started the show, were you thinking, and at any point were you thinking, man, I can't wait to say things like, and then he made the hot tag to T-Bar.
Slapjack makes the hot tag to T-Bar.
Slapjack makes the hot tag to T-Bar. Oh, man. What are we doing?
What is this like?
What is this?
And this is a company that has both Mysterios, Kalisto, Lindsay Dorado, Grand Metalik / Mascara Dorada. I mean, like, they have Ricochet. Like, they have all this talent, and this is what they're doing.
Exactly.
They're intentionally misusing them, and it's just aggravating.
Oh, man.
And especially in the lead up to WrestleMania season, when there's so much promise coming up that we just can't seem to get delivered on.
Yeah, I'm just, all of it just so frustrating.
Yes. Again, they have every resource and tool in the world. They have money.
Yes.
Have, not only the equipment, they have the most talented roster in the entire world. And yet.
And access to even more talent if they want it.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's where the frustration comes, I feel like that's really what it comes down to, is that they can do better. Like, it's
Absolutely.
not that it's just WWE or, oh, they're this big juggernaut. Like, it's because they have every resource to do better. You know, all these other companies, you know, are doing the best with the resources they have. And maybe AEW is, like, still on that line where, you know, they're almost in the same boat sometimes because they have a lot of these resources, though not to the capacity of WWE. But exactly what you said, Dusty, they have, you know, the best of the best luchadors on their roster.
They really do.
Mm-hmm.
And constantly we get this kind of just dumb stuff that like insults our intelligence. And now I understand it's under the cloak of entertainment, quote unquote, but it does feel like, yeah, it's insulting the intelligence of fans and of people who really have an
Absolutely.
appreciation for wrestling.
Absolutely. And why sign this talent to use them this way? And like, we've kind of seen that with somebody like Rusev in AEW. He was, you know, misused in WWE, and he has yet to get his rhythm or momentum back that he had a few years ago. And I don't know what that means for somebody like Mascara Dorada after so many years away from Mexico. If he leaves being Grand Metalik and goes back to Mexico, was his reputation from before enough? Because we don't see that enough in WWE to continue his reputation.
Yeah.
And so it's a very strange thing WWE is doing right now.
And it's just so hurtful that they actively and aggressively go after all of this Latin talent because they have an idea and then they just let that fruit rot after they get it. Like, I mean, Andrade is still not back on TV. And I mean, if
That's
anybody
our biggest disappointment.
if anybody has a shot because he's got Ric Flair on his side. Come on.
Yes. Well, and there was a story recently out about Charlotte being asked about, you know, if she would ever be open to her, you know, behind the scenes relationship with Andrade on air. And she said she's open to it. She's even pitched it. So, I mean, think about having, you know, one of the biggest power couples in all of pro wrestling together on screen. And in that power couple, the power part of it is Charlotte Flair.
Yeah.
Like that in and of
Love
itself
that.
is fantastic. And it would be such a good, you know, way to reintroduce Andrade. And yet we still, and you know, Charlotte and the dynamic she has with her dad is always going to be fairly compelling because there's a lot, I think, of authenticity to it and natural, like family dynamic of, you know, daughter and father. However, going back to the whole insulting our intelligence is now they're utilizing him with, you know, Lacey Evans, and we went through a few weeks of a crazy storyline with them.
Right.
Which
you know,
only ended because of outside elements.
Yes.
So you know, I just, for the record, I would fully support a Charlotte Andrade on screen.
I would too.
Oh man, me too. I would actually start watching the show live again.
Yes.
And we touched on it last week, but you know, like the idea of like a female-led team or you know, group, whatever they come up with, is so interesting and not yet done. Like, it's kind of unusual, you know, like we talked about that last week with Sasha, you know, if she could, you know, be team boss or whatever, you know, like I would like to see some female-led factions. That's, you know, they make a big show out of their women's empowerment now in WWE, and they have the best women's rosters. So why don't they make some investment? Same thing all around. Yeah, they just WWE problems.
Yes. Well.
Yeah. WWE's gonna WWE.
Yes. So we're just gonna let that sit. We're gonna let that WWE stuff sit, and we're gonna jump over to AEW for this week's Dark and Dynamite, and a little bit of a preview of Revolution happening this weekend.
So first up on Dark, we had our first match of the night, Lucha Relevant match. Red Velvet and Kylan King got the surprise upset and won against Ivelisse and Diamante in their first tag loss on Dark this year. And so now they're 4-1. They'd been 4-0. We'll see. I mean, like, big things coming with Red Velvet, but again, Ivelisse and Diamante are the best tag team in the world. And so we'll see what comes of it. I hope to see more tag action in the future. And then the second match, once again, we were deprived of the Tornado DDT when Top Flight defeated Fuego del Sol and John Cruz. SCU defeated Matt and Mike Seidel. And then we had TH2 against Sean Dean and Carly Bravo. TH2 were fantastic in this match. Angelico was really the gravitational focus of the match, but TH2 were really working together tonight. Perfect work. That $3,700 from Matt Hardy must have bought him some practice time because they were perfectly synced, leading to Angelico getting the Navarre death roll before a leg bar for the finisher. It was fantastic. I love the reinvigoration of making the TH2 kind of like the hired guns for big money Matt Hardy, you know, like they're willing to take the bounty. And it's so cool and unusual, and like I say, a nice reinvigoration of their team. And I have a slight thing I noticed during their intro. I've meant to mention this before, but my favorite thing during the intro is not Angelico's dancing, but how you can perfectly see their personalities during the intro. Angelico comes out all cool and calm, does his little dance, but Jack Evans is doing backflips, he's jumping around, he's like a monkey. It's incredible. And you see that energy and that dynamic, and they are just so unique together, and I'm hoping that this leads to more for them on Dynamite. I'll touch on that in a minute. But on Dynamite, first up, we had Ray Phoenix and Pax versus John Schuyler and D3. This was a quick match. It was just 1 minute and 10 seconds, but what a fantastic 70 seconds it was. Phoenix and Pac dominated. They looked just lethal, not just tough, but lethal. Everything they did was flawless, and it was really fantastic for as quick as it was. This was one of the better squash type matches we've seen on TV lately. But next up we had, like some of the real meat in a tag team matchup, FTR and Tully Blanchard versus the Jurassic Express. This was a really fun match, hard hitting at times, some really fun antics from Tully Blanchard. He put more in than I was expecting with most spots. He worked great with Marco Stunt. His smaller size helped him work with Tully. It was great. Luchasaurus looked like a killer in the ring. He was fantastic with the suplex work, but it wasn't enough as a masked man ran into much confusion and helped Team FTR, and they were able to pick up the win with a 3-man spike pile driver, and Tully got the pin on Marco Stunt. After the match, the masked man was revealed to be a bleached blonde Shawn Spears, and Arn Anderson comes out and gives the 4 Horsemen hand to the group. So, exciting things happening there. We may see a 4 Horsemen versus Jurassic Express match soon. And, we'll kind of see it.
I'd be there for that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, speaking of things that you didn't think about when the show started.
4 Horsemen versus anybody.
Especially Jurassic Express.
Yeah, Jurassic Express, and that you'd be so excited for it. You're like, yes, this is the match I need. It's so good. And later in the show, we had kind of some tag team insanity going on. Everybody showed up in the ring. And that leads us to AEW Revolution this Sunday, March the 7th. We will feature Penta in a TNT contendership ladder match. Phoenix will be teaming with Pac to be in the AEW Casino Tag Team Battle Royale. And so, it's kind of interesting. We've been seeing a lot more of this pairing of Phoenix and Pac lately as more of a tag team, and they've definitely set Penta apart as a solo guy, at least for this pay-per-view. Revolution last year was their highest rated pay-per-view. It actually won pay-per-view of the year in the Wrestling Observer Awards, rather. So it's got a lot to live up to. We'll see what happens, but they've really been shining a light on Phoenix and Pac, so I think we could see them win this tag team battle royale. But SCU is involved in the match, and what does that mean for their retirement? Now, do they only retire if they get pinned? Do they retire if they don't win this battle royale? It opens up a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and then like, do both members agree to it? If neither of them takes the pin, but they don't win, does like Kazarian say, because he's the one that set this up in the first place, like that's it, we're done, and Daniels be like, no, that's not what I agreed to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be there's a lot of very cool storytelling they can do. Or they could just win it, which is not to say that that's not cool, but that's a just very different kind of cool, because then they're in contendership for the titles, and maybe them putting their if we don't win we'll quit vibe up against the Young Bucks, who had a run of if we don't win we'll quit, would be.
I think they said they wouldn't challenge for the tag team titles.
Yeah. Similar energy.
Yeah, similar energy, similar vibes, Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And very much like with Death Triangle, the SCU also has a solo member in the TNT contendership ladder match with Scorpio Sky. So it opens up an interesting dynamic between those two tag teams. A lot of comparisons and similarities that'll be very interesting to keep an eye on Sunday during the tag team match. And then we also had, for the buy-in before the match, Thunder Rosa will be teaming with Riho. But first up, Thunder Rosa defeated Riho in a fantastic match as part of the women's tournament. Believe that one was on Bleacher Report. It ended up on YouTube regardless.
Yes, because of the technical difficulties related to that. But yeah, this was the one that was on Bleacher Report.
It was fantastic. I highly recommend it. They worked together so well. And then she had it was a good match, but it wasn't like the Riho match with Nyla Rose, who went on to lose on Dynamite. And so, but anyway, now Thunder Rosa is in a tag team with Riho against Britt Baker, and originally Rebel, but then Britt says that Rebel's injured. She wants to pick her own tag team partner. And we think about when Paul White, formerly Big Show, came out and said, there's a unique talent coming, a Hall of Fame caliber talent. So and he also said, it's not who you think it is. So do we think that it could be Britt Baker's partner? I mean, somebody maybe like AJ Lee could show up to challenge Thunder Rosa and Rio with Britt, or Brendan, I think you had
I mentioned the name just shot out of my head again.
Mickie James.
Mickie James, thank you. I don't know why I'm having trouble with her name today, but she's definitely Hall of Fame worthy, and
absolutely.
And I believe she's still a free agent. So yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, obviously on this show we're all going to be rooting for any sort of unfortunately it can't be Taya anymore, but there's other lucha ladies that could show up, which we would all be excited to see. Although teaming with Britt Baker, I hope not.
I think Thea Trinidad.
I mean, Tony has come out and said he is interested in working with her, and so he's been waiting until her no compete clause has expired. So he has gone out to state he is going to be actively talking with her, and whether that be and I think it could be in a managerial role, of course, because she is very, very talented in that way, but they definitely need her caliber on the women's roster. They need someone and you think about it, you're looking for a good heel tag team. She can produce that in a snap. She could do that with her eyes closed. So if you're looking for someone, to bring in the heat, Thea can do that.
Yep, absolutely. I'd be a little sad to have Rebel replaced, because I think Rebel is a wonderful revelation in that role.
Spot, like they are so perfect together. And to think that she came in as a makeup person, and then got to move on. I mean, it's just incredible her arc, and And Britt
Yeah.
Baker too. The last year, it's back to the Wrestling Observer Awards. She won Most Improved, and you can really see it in this feud. And it took somebody. I mean, steel sharpens steel, and we saw that with Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker. Somehow they pushed it to be more than what it was when they poured the water on her face and wiped off the makeup. And I mean, like, there has been some incredible heel work with Britt Baker on this. And so I'm really excited to see where this goes. I actually contacted AEW some time ago for a quote or an interview from Thunder Rosa or Britt Baker, and I was told that they wouldn't be giving any interviews or quotes or anything until after Revolution. So that's kind of interesting too. It, sets up a more mysterious dynamic for the show and what may happen there. And I also think that we could also maybe see Deonna Purrazzo come. We've seen a lot of Impact talent back and forth, and I just don't know. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of up in the air.
Well, and that would be super beneficial for Impact, because if the only people that from Impact who've been on AEW television are the Good Brothers. And so if it's truly this, crossover or partnership, whatever it is, leverage what Impact has going pretty well for itself for the most part in the Knockouts division, and lend that to the AEW women's division, which is still really kind of struggling to find its footing. So I absolutely agree with that idea, and that teamwork, I think, and dynamic between Britt Baker and Deonna Purrazzo would be awesome.
Yeah,
it
would be
fantastic.
Like, that'd be such a cool team. And so it'll be interesting. There's a lot that could go on in AEW this week. Revolution, like I mentioned, was kind of the pay-per-view last year. That's the one that everybody, there was a lot of emotional investment in the storylines, and so it'll be interesting. It kind of sets up a lot of things for this year, so hopefully we'll see a lot, more lucha content. There's going to be a sixth competitor in the ladder match that hasn't been announced yet, but from the kind of discussion with Tony Khan, it sounds like that's going to be somebody within the company. We'll see who that is. That will be kind of fun and interesting. But we also have the street fight with Brian Cage and Ricky Starks versus Sting and Darby Allin, and I am really looking forward to that. Team Taz, we've seen a lot. I have a feeling this will be a cinematic match or filmed in a way that Sting doesn't really need to do much, but we've also seen him take a bump from Brian Cage. Yeah. So it's
and they've gone out of their way to make him look strong, like he's throwing people around.
Yeah.
So I think he wants to do some work, and it may still be more cinematic in nature, but Sting does not seem to be shy of doing it, because he took the power bomb, and he then also found his way through on this in the fight this week, the scrum this week, where he got to look powerful and dominant and clear the ring almost by himself.
Yeah, they're really doing their best to make him seem almost superhuman. So it'll be exciting to see. We saw how well it worked with The Undertaker in the Boneyard match at WrestleMania to do it cinematic style. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes from Revolution. And we will have all the results and news and excitement from Revolution next week, right here, same time, same place, same channel.
Thank you, Dusty, for all of the WWE and AEW news and roundup. Up next, we have MLW. We had the return of Fusion this week, and the show started off with the MLW World Tag Team Champions, Los Parks, facing Contra Unit, Daivari and Simon Gotch. And, this match was a great display for Simon Gotch and Daivari, especially Daivari. He really used more of his technical skill set to really put a hurting on Hijo de LA Park. But ultimately, as you know, the tactics that Los Parks have pulled, eventually we did see LA Park Jr. come out from underneath the ring. However, the referee caught it this time and prevented him from coming into the ring to do the old switcheroo. However, another thing happened in which, was bad news for Contra Unit, and that was Injustice. Jordan Oliver and Myron Reed came out for the distraction, and Contra Unit has been having this rivalry against Injustice for quite some time. They ended up causing the distraction, and LA Park was able to use his vicious spear on Daivari for the win. So you still have Los Parks as your tag team champions. We also had a really good match between Calvin Tankman and Laredo Kid. And so, we've seen something similar with Calvin Tankman versus Zenshi not too long ago. And Calvin Tankman's size is still something that, is very similar to some of the big men that can actually move and be athletic, like Keith Lee, like Willie Mack, like Black Taurus. Those things are very impressive. But Laredo Kid had a really good, outstanding match with this. I mean, really trying to leverage his speed and lucha libre skills to kind of just almost confuse Calvin Tankman. There was a brutal shoulder block that sent Laredo Kid flying halfway across the ring.
Spinning in the air.
Yes.
So, it was brutal looking. It was great.
Yes. And Calvin Tankman did win with the Tankman driver. And there was still also some discussion too about what a win for Laredo Kid for this match would mean, as to, trying to get his way back to Leo Rush and eventually the AAA, Cruiserweight Championship. They still mentioned that Leo Rush is still both the MLW middleweight and AAA Cruiserweight champion. So they start distinguishing those things on MLW television. So, pretty interesting in that. But I think too, utilizing someone who's, with the experience of Laredo Kid to the size of Calvin Tankman, they really did use this episode to help build him up, as we saw later on in the show. But also, go ahead.
They did a thing that I found very cool with this match. Laredo Kid, when he was on his game, was ahead most of the time. So when he was using quickness and kicks and coming at you from all the odd angles, Tankman looked in trouble. But Laredo Kid kept stopping and throwing punches. And every time that he threw a punch or tried to do any sort of power move to Tankman would take right back over, which is exactly how that's supposed to work.
Yeah,
so,
it really is. MLW is very smart in how some of their things are a little silly, but in the majority of the time, I will cite Los Parks constantly using the same twin magic routine, as silly. Like, literally the match before this is one where I'm like, I don't know if I trust that. However, you're absolutely right. In the composition of their matches and the way that they strategize them, it makes sense. And so, absolutely, it does make you wonder why Laredo Kid would then try to use a power move when there was an obvious size disadvantage. And
I found myself yelling at the screen because of that. So they did a good job. They made me like care that he was being dumb. Like, stop it!
You're better than this, Laredo Kid. You're better than this. So, again, another, very outstanding episode of MLW Fusion. We are still seeing, the effects of Promociones Dorado, as they are still representing Los Parks, and, that presence is still lingering, of course, with Selena De La Renta. And they are indicating that, maybe we are going to see some kind of rivalry, some kind of program between, Hammerstone, and, oh gosh, why am I skipping his name? The Dynasty. Richard Holiday. Yes.
Holiday.
Versus, Promociones as Azteca. So they're seeming to hint something there, which would be very interesting to see. So, especially like if you have like a Mil Muertes versus Hammerstone, like.
Oh, please take my money.
Okay. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So, we'll remain watching MLW to see what happens next. But speaking of MLW, the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast team had the honor of interviewing someone who you can watch regularly on MLW, and that is the aerial artist himself, Zenshi. We were able to speak with him about, his work currently at MLW, but also more of his training and background in Chile, and more in Central and Southern, Latin America, his training in the United States, and also some of his work with luchaware.art and what he's trying to do to really help build the wrestling economy around the world. So it was a fantastic interview, and we are very excited for you to listen to it. Brennan and so I'm curious, what were some of your takeaways from the interview with Zenshi?
The concept of lucha economy or wrestling economy, really, I love that. I love that, what he's doing with his website and what he's doing with people that he's worked with in the past and people that he wants to work with in the future is trying to sow the seeds of putting wrestling in parts of the world that it's either not doing well in or hasn't been traditionally in. And that's how you grow the sport in new and different ways, is you put it in communities that haven't had an opportunity like this until someone takes the time to invest in them. So that just blew me away.
Yeah, that was very cool. And his investment in the mask making and everything there was very cool too. That I believe it was a Peruvian maker.
Yes.
Yes.
For the one that he had, but I mean,
yes.
He's got he says he gets a mask everywhere he goes. So
yeah, that's very cool.
Mm-hmm. So the full interview is up on Lucha Central's YouTube page, but we're going to give you a little sneak peek right now with our exclusive interview with MLW superstar Zenshi.
Actually bound to these South American areas. Can you describe for the some of us that kind of the similarities and differences in the indie structure there versus here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Well, in America, there's no shortage of wrestling shows to be a part of. Well, I'm kind of speaking pre-pandemic too, because the landscape has completely changed now.
Of course, yeah.
So this was a little more true before last year, but it's still, there's a lot of opportunities here. In South America, Chile, Santiago specifically, has become like the epicenter for a lot of the wrestling in South America. It's probably one of the only places you could be a wrestler and kind of stay semi-active is the Santiago area. Outside of Santiago, there's wrestling in Chile, but maybe one or two promotions here or there. In Peru, there's literally 3 promotions, and one doesn't even run very often. There's 2. And in Bolivia, there's like 2. You know what I mean? In Paraguay, there's 1. In Ecuador, there's probably like 3. Colombia, maybe 3. It's very it's struggling, and part of that is the enormous cost for anyone outside of South America to come there. So think about over time. You got the veterans that were there, they're only getting older. They're doing their best to teach the next generation, but without fresh blood, of course, their ideas are going to get kind of stale. You need, if the wrestlers aren't working, if they're not wrestling, people better than them, foreigners that can bring them things that they can't know, over time, the wrestling economy kind of struggles, in places like that are kind of far off. And not just South America, like Zimbabwe, I'm sure there's plenty of people that would love to be wrestlers there, but how? It's tough.
Yeah.
So it develops in pockets. So Santiago is a huge pocket. Lima's a good place to wrestle, but it's very different. Very different. Very different.
You brought up the wrestling economy a few times. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Luchaware and how that project is, working towards developing and building the wrestling economy in several Latin American countries?
You're sharp, Miranda. You're sharp. Yeah. So I got this thing going on. Who likes video games in the room? Anybody know Zelda?
Yes.
So the old Triforce, everything working together. So I created this little thing over the pandemic period, and I had this in my mind for some years, but it took sitting at home, not being able to wrestle, trying to figure out what do we do if we can't wrestle, for you to finally give birth to these ideas. We all got them, right? We all got them. So one of those points is called lucha wear. One of those points is called the League of Luchadors, the LOL for short. And one of those points is called We Can Lucha. And I'll speak to that one first. We Can Lucha is kind of like our way of giving back. Like I've said, all these years I've been going to Chile. Let me start with this. My first trip that I went to Chile was in 2014. I had just won this title, this bright-eyed kid that's only been in the business a couple of years, blah, 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 blah. Now they want to bring me here, and they treated me like a king. They treated me in a way that I've never been treated on the indies, as just a throwaway guy, a number in the locker room. There's so many dirty, deceitful people, promoters, wrestlers. There's a lot of good people too, but especially at that time, like, people like to take advantage of you. It was a different environment in Chile. I was, the way I was treated was and respected, to the point where it's like, okay, all right, you make the mat. Like, you're here. Like, we listen to you. And I'm like, almost overwhelmed. Like, I'm like, you guys got it wrong. I'm just some kid. Like, I can't handle this. But they trusted me with that. And it was a learning experience. Okay. So then I come back maybe a year later, and it's great, blah, blah, blah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is just a sneak peek, a little taste of our interview with Zenshi. As you can tell, we had a great time. He was a fantastic interview, and getting to learn more about, his, work in lucha libre, that style and aesthetic, why that, and, again, his continued great work in MLW, including some of the people that he wants to face next. There were some very interesting names that he mentioned. So go ahead and watch the full interview on Lucha Central. Brendan, you got some, new information for us on Mass Republic and what's going on with them.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just mentioned something casually, and suddenly you get all kinds of information. It's great. So Expo Lucha is coming up March 20th. Look for the video to be live streamed on the Lucha Central YouTube and the Expo Lucha Facebook page. I alluded to it earlier, that Vampiro interview is going to be on there. Kevin has said that he's listened to the feedback from fans. There will be more panels, but they will also be shorter, so that those of you that need to get up and play with your G.I. Joes or whatever it is you're doing in lockdown, you can do that. There will be live autograph signings with live virtual autograph signings with Psychosis and Bestia 666 in this next week. So as we are recording here, and then we're going to go up on Saturday probably, sometime after you're hearing this, look to Expo Lucha's social media or Mass Republic social media. They are going to be dropping details next week on how to participate in the virtual autograph signings. So this is your chance to do that, and the only thing really that's going to be stopping you is if you don't know how to do it. So when we know, we'll bring it up on the show, but hopefully it's not time sensitive, and you won't have already missed it if you wait a full week for us to tell you how to do it. We also got some other very interesting news. And Miranda, would you like to tell us about what special part you're going to be playing in this year's Expo Lucha?
Yes, yeah, not to put me on the spot or anything. But yes, me, Miranda Morales, I will be your host for the Luchador dating game that they will be having at Expo Lucha. So I will be helping a contestant find the love of their life with, some luchador bachelors. And so, I'm a firm believer in love. I believe in it. I hope that people find it, and, why not? If I can do my part to help play matchmaker. It is the Ring of Love dating game. And so, just, I believe it was a few days ago, if you are interested in becoming a contestant, they had information on expolucha.com. But yes, I will be your lovely host for the Ring of Love dating game.
So
Very cool.
There you go. There's your, if you are the Bachelorette, there's your consolation prize. You get to hang out with Miranda. I mean,
yes. And find true love. I mean, isn't love the ultimate prize?
Well, it is for the love of lucha, as Kevin mentioned. So hopefully that's what happens. As much lucha and much love happens out of this event. But
Corazón,
I mean,
amor.
that's cool news. Congratulations on getting that. That sounds like it's going to be fun. Hopefully we get to announce in the near future we won't announce it, who they are. We will have to all tune in and find out.
Yes.
That's how it's supposed to go. That's the trick. I want to know who these guys are. That's why I'm so excited about this, because there's so many interesting personalities in the world of lucha.
We do not know who the contestant is, the lovely Bachelorette, and we do not know who the bachelors are, the luchadors. So the fact that there's so many unknown variables already will make my job either way easier or way harder. So even if you
could be way hard. Just look at the personalities that exist in lucha. There is nothing timid or normal about anybody that could possibly be on the show, which is what has me so excited about this. So, good luck to you, but I think you're going to have a blast. So then one of the other cool things we got is that Kevin mentioned that there's going to be special Expo Lucha only merch. There's going to be stuff that you will only be able to get the week of Expo Lucha that's, I believe, going to be exclusive from any of the vendors they've got. There's going to be Expo Lucha themed merch that you will be able to get this year, and other things. But they are holding off on announcing that sort of thing for a little while longer, but they did want me to mention that little tease that there's going to be exclusive merch, and I mean, Kevin knows that that's how you get my ears to perk up. Like, exclusive merch? Please tell me more. Yeah. Is it Boss Fight Studio exclusive merch? Because I will throw money at the screen. And those of you who will eventually get to see the Zenshi interview, I throw money at the screen during that too, so I'm not kidding.
That's true. He literally did. If Senshi could reach through the screen, he could have probably grabbed Brendan's wallet.
And I wouldn't have regretted it. And then he gave. We have the match. I went over some of the matches last week. I did get confirmation that there are going to be a number. He didn't say what the number was of never before seen matches from Lucha Time.
Oh,
so
okay.
Never before seen is considerably different than, we found these under the couch after we showed them last time. So super exciting stuff. We've been covering Lucha Time on this show. If I get more information on who some of the participants are, I might be able to give you guys a little bit of a primer. So that's my next super secret question I'm going to try and get him to cue us in on, but stay tuned. Maybe I'll have more info on who some of these Lucha Time people will be. That's what we've got. It's all about Expo Lucha. They're excited and pumped for that. That's March 20th, Lucha Central YouTube, Expo Lucha Facebook page.
Thank you, Brendan, for that update. Up next, NXT. And really the big highlight for Lucha Libre fans this week was the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship match between Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai. Now, Raquel and Dakota won this opportunity by becoming the winners of the first ever Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, the Women's Tag Team Classic, Dusty Cup champions. And so this has been something anticipated for a few weeks after their stare down on NXT. And so both teams were fairly riled up. Also, shout out, Raquel Gonzalez was featured on NXT's Instagram stories. And she had some really good segments between her and Raul Mendoza of Legado del Fantasma, just being an absolute boss. and I really enjoyed it. So shout out to her. But yes, so in this match, really though, the interesting dynamic here is that, speaking of Raquel Gonzalez, she wasn't featured that much in this match. Dakota Kai was the one who started, and she was pretty outmatched by Shayna Baszler already, and someone who she's had history with. The Dakota Kai we see in this ring today is very different than the Dakota Kai that, was in the ring prior to with Shayna Baszler. So that was already a pretty high level of anticipation. However, Shayna Baszler is the same Shayna Baszler. So, Dakota Kai was fairly outmatched. And then we had tag-ins with Nia Jax as well, who she really utilized her size in order to keep Dakota Kai away from Raquel Gonzalez. Now, we finally did get that hot tag with Raquel Gonzalez, but it was a picture-in-picture moment, which was very disappointing, where we had Shayna Baszler versus Raquel Gonzalez, and there was some great moments with grappling, which again, that is Shayna's bread and butter, but it's almost a surprise too that, Raquel went in there and said, I got you. You think that this is
second generation luchador.
Yeah. It just, that was fascinating, but you had to really pay attention in picture, which was just, it kind of blew my mind as to why they did it.
It hurt my heart.
Right?
It hurt.
Yeah.
I'd been waiting weeks for that moment, and
right? Yeah. They did break it up. They were outside of the ring, and both pairs kind of stared each other down. And there was a spot where Shayna Baszler almost locked in the Kirifuda clutch on Dakota Kai, but Raquel Gonzalez broke that up and got a tag in. However, the referee went down, and we also had Gonzalez and Nia Jax go outside the ring and smash into the announce table. Mm-hmm. Then there was some kind of confusion as to who the legal person was. Technically, Raquel Gonzalez was the legal person. She had tagged in. However, a new referee came out and believed Dakota Kai to be the legal person. So Dakota Kai tapped out to the Kirifuda clutch. Even
passed
though
out.
Passed
she
out.
Didn't tap.
She did not tap. But passed out to the Kirifuda clutch, and Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler retained. However, that was on the calling of Adam Pearce coming from, Raw and SmackDown, and William Regal's not having any of this. Nobody comes to NXT without William Regal having something to say about this. So they are alluding to a big announcement William Regal is going to have next week about this match, about the status of the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. But it does seem that, this is not over yet. So I think that this was, as much as it's a disappointment to not have some resolution, it also then means we're probably going to see this again.
We get to see it again. And hopefully with more time.
Yes.
And no commercial breaks, god damn it.
No picture-in-picture. I think I was kind of excited to see Raquel and Nia, but to see Raquel and Shayna in the ring, that itself was very, very interesting. Just because of the fact that not only with her size and strength, but also her wrestling ability, Raquel can go toe-to-toe with Shayna, period.
Yeah, and we got to see it, which just makes... One of the many reasons why I just keep swearing up and down that Raquel is just a super mega star and waiting to happen. And we get closer and closer every week. They just keep putting her in these great matches with great situations. So somebody believes in her, other than me.
No, absolutely. Again, like she was featured on a takeover of WWE's Instagram page, and you got to see a little bit of comedy, a little bit of her ridiculous workout movements in the WWE Performance Center, calling out Raquel or Raul Mendoza. That was awesome. So I loved it. Speaking of, we did see a return of Legado de Fantasma.
Oh, and it was so great.
Yeah, so, last week, Santos lost against Karrion Kross in a no DQ match. This week we were supposed to see a tag match between Everrise and Breezango. However, as Breezango was making their entrance, Legado de Fantasma came out and attacked them. and then Santos Escobar single-handedly took out Everrise. And so they declared, after they laid everybody out, Santos declared that the group was still as strong, as good as ever. And so they are reestablishing themselves, and they're going after, these tag teams. Now, it does seem like, are they trying to go for the NXT tag titles, or what exactly? Is there any? We did know that they had some kind of a past with Breezango. Are they going to revisit that, or are we going to see them, attack more people on the roster? I think it'd be great that you kind of almost you don't know where they're going to show up. You kind of need that unpredictability to kind of help reestablish them as a trio, and not like as a strong.
Unexpected.
Yeah, as a strong force to be reckoned with trio. So they're planting some seeds with Legado de Fantasma. And I don't think that the loss itself to Carrion was anything negative for them. I think even with that, they are still one of the best groups in NXT. So I do think, though, taking it up a notch and really being more aggressive is how you continue to keep people's attention, and you also then kind of elevate them to the next level. Now, some interesting NXT news that came out this week. Rumors have been circulating that NXT is looking to move to Tuesday nights. There's been some speculation that it's going to be happening the Tuesday after WrestleMania. And I'll share a perspective, and then I know Brendan has some additional news and perspective on it. This comes the information that I know and perspective that I've heard, that it is a decision based off of something that's happening with NBC, specifically NBC Sports. That is a channel that is going to be going away soon, and that content needs to move to other NBC Universal entities. The specific sport that is impacting this is hockey, that usually goes on Wednesday nights. So the business decision behind this seemingly is that hockey is going to be coming into USA Networks on Wednesday, so that they have to move NXT to Tuesdays. Brendan, you have a different perspective on this, kind of a different spin that others have been reporting on. I want to share that as well.
Yeah, it's rooted in the same thing, that NBC is largely responsible for this change, but it's the emphasis originally when NXT went on Wednesdays was that even though they were pretty sure they might lose head to head against AEW, if they took a significant chunk of the AEW viewership away from them during investors calls, they would still be able to make Raw and SmackDown look stronger. But with the emphasis being we need subscribers to this new NBC service, we want to get the best viewership possible for a show, it makes more sense to have NXT go uncontested by another wrestling show, although Tuesday is not really the absolute best night for that either. But I don't think the WWE or NBC are aware of the indie shows on Tuesday. So they decided the rumor was they decided to move it for that reason, to have a better access to viewership and have the best audience rate that they could get to keep subscribers involved in Peacock. Mm-hmm. And then I got an email today this week as a subscriber to the network talking about that, and I found this part of it interesting too, that NXT on Peacock, once it's all content is available there, will be available the next day on Peacock, whereas episodes of Raw and SmackDown will not be available until 30 days after air date. So if you want to keep up to date on your NXT, which let's face it is unquestionably the best product the WWE has right now, the Peacock channel seems like the best investment. But and then I think they know it too, if they're gonna make it so that's your place to go if you can't watch it live.
Yeah, very good point about how the move of the WWE Network to Peacock may be influencing what's happening with NXT, because we originally think it's only going to affect more of that typical content on the network, but again and that's what happens too with big conglomerates or big organizations like NBC Universal that owns multiple networks. These things just have a way of happening, whether it is a business strategy related to some of their other networks, or is it really how directly tied is it into WWE and them adopting the WWE network. So we will be reporting more as we hear more about what is going to be happening with NXT if it does move on to another night. That's definitely going to change the dynamics of Wednesday nights if we see them move. And we'll definitely be talking about it because there's very, very, very many layers to it. But don't forget, you can get your NXT results on luchacentral.com. Brendan, you have some CMLL news to share.
Just a little bit. The Copa Junior is available for purchase on Ticketmaster. It is currently 178 pesos. They have not promised or threatened to raise the price, but that was their traditional scheme the last time they were doing this, is as you got closer to the date that the prices would raise. So this is definitely the time to do it, because that is, my quick math says that's somewhere in the neighborhood of like $8 to $10. So I'm definitely not afraid to spend that much money for 2 hours of Lucha Libre. There is still no video on demand option because it's a Ticketmaster thing. So if you want to watch it, you have to tune in. Previous ones, select matches eventually wound up on the YouTube channel. But again, no promises. So if you are interested in the Copa Junior or any of the matches revolving around it, the best way to do it is get on Ticketmaster. If you are having trouble with the page, which I did the first time I did it, feel free to message me. I will give you help. I believe there's a guide that a couple of people might have put out there. I'm going to try and find it so that I can link it to you as well. But I'm always happy to help if you need to order yourself. And then in other news, CMLL and New Japan have finally announced that they're still in a partnership together. The timing on it was kind of weird as far as, like Cubs fan and a couple of other people were like, well, why didn't you say this like when you announced the canceling of Fantastica Mania, which would have made more sense? Like, why can't we announce it then? But, who knows? Maybe it's just they finally came to the agreement. Like, oh yeah, no, we really do want to keep doing shows with each other going on, even though there's this pandemic going on. Maybe we should say something officially so people don't get worried. But they did say that. Dusty, did you hear anything from the New Japan side on the agreement?
All I really heard was basically what you heard, that they said they would not use any talent, would not work with anyone in Mexico aside from CMLL, and that they would not be bringing in any talent to New Japan aside from CMLL. And so it's kind of hard to say there. I think it's just an affirmation. Like, they didn't run Fantastica Mania this year, and I think people were just kind of curious, especially with AAA working with AEW and just New Japan working with AEW. The lines are more blurred than they ever were, and I think this was just an attempt to clear the water a little and kind of let on that it's a happy partnership between the two of them, and they expect it to continue.
And we fully know that CMLL does not want to have anything to do with any sort of partnership with any organization that might work with AAA. I first Expo Lucha, I watched this happen. They announced like a good half dozen to a dozen CMLL wrestlers that were going to be appearing, and then a week later they announced like 2 or 3 active AAA wrestlers that were going to be appearing. And slowly but surely, all of the CMLL wrestlers disappeared off of that, and it's just because CMLL does not want to have any wrestlers working at shows with AAA talent, period. So yeah, if AEW is working with AAA and New Japan, and New Japan is, potentially going to have AAA wrestlers hanging around in the locker room, they want to, CMLL probably needed that assurance, but that certainly, they didn't say anything on that out loud, but also CMLL doesn't out loud say that they hate AAA either. So
it's all underlying. That's all.
Yeah.
yeah,
The unwritten politics of Lucha Libre.
Yes. Oh, I mean, that's historic, but, speaking of historic, Dusty, why don't you take us to this week in Lucha Libre history?
Yeah, that's right. It's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for This Day in Lucha Libre History by Pep Carrera for information, birth dates, anniversaries, amazing videos, everything, all about Lucha Libre at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. This week I chose March the 4th, 2016, when Dragon Lee defeated Kametachi, better known now as Hiromu Takahashi, for the CMLL World Super Lightweight Championship. This was a great match. Dragon Lee and Hiromu, they faced each other 10 times. Dragon Lee has the slight advantage with 6 wins to Hiromu's 4, and this match was probably their best match together out of the 10. Just fantastic. The first 2 falls came very quickly in less than 5 minutes, but the third fall was drawn out for nearly 20 minutes. It was just fantastic. Dragon Lee got the win and with a Phoenix Plex, and became the 2-time CMLL Super Lightweight Champion. He had only been pinned at that point by Kametachi, so it was kind of an interesting story, hot feud. I highly recommend everybody check out this match. It's a technical masterpiece. Like, it is just so good.
Great match.
And
yeah,
I'm hoping that by not elaborating as much on the specifics of the match, that it will encourage people to watch it, because it is incredible. Like, I don't want to give much away. You need to see it. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
What
Just
did you
go watch it.
Yeah, check it out. Like, yeah, pause the podcast, check out the match, then come back. What did you pick this week, Brendan?
So I had a master plan. I had a nice historic match that I was all excited about, and then I looked at the list again, and I realized that there was a match of the day that I thought would be very interesting to watch. So this week, I chose match of the day from March 3rd, 2005, the 290th episode of SmackDown, where Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio wrestled against Mark Jindrak and Luther Reigns. Now, those of you who are a little younger may not be aware why this is a fantastic lucha match. Mark Jindrak later went on to be known as Marco Corleone and performed out of CMLL for a long time. He so embraced the lucha libre culture. He was married by Frey Torment, the character, the persona that Jack Black based the Nacho Libre movie on. So I mean, he is thoroughly lucha libre, and Eddie and Ray obviously are generation defining luchadors. So I wanted to watch this. Jindrak and Reigns were being booked and used like typical Vince McMahon action figure men. Like they were big guys who were throwing the little guys around, and they were mean about it. So there was you could see little hints of Jindrak's like athletic ability and that he could have been a good luchador, but he clearly didn't have anything lucha like in this match. But seeing him work with Eddie and Ray, and then knowing the future that was going to be there, made this match very interesting. And at the end of the match, this was the match where they lost, Jindrak and Reigns lost, and then they had a little bit of a fist fight at the end of it. So believe that if you were to continue on in that history, you start to see Jindrak turn face, and he starts to do a little more of that high-flying stuff. But I'm less aware on that because SmackDown was usually on nights that I worked at that in 2005. So I only got to see SmackDown on rare occasions, and DVRing wasn't a thing in my life yet. So that was what I had. Match of the day from March 3rd, 2005. Miranda, what did you wind up finding this week?
I ended up picking March 5th, 2017, and this is when El Apache, Fabi Apache, and Mary Apache won the AAA World Trios Championship after beating Los OGTs, Averno, Chessman, and Superfly Ricky Marvin. And this was at a live AAA show. And this is where it gets... The description of it is technically, yes, that's what happened, but it's not exactly what happened.
No.
Because these belts changed hands technically in a singles match between Fabi Apache and Ricky Marvin. And this was an apuestas match. It was a title versus career match. So essentially, if Fabi lost, the Apache family had to retire. And if not, then if they did win, then they became trios champions, and that's exactly what happened. So it was not a typical trios match. It was technically a one-on-one match, and Fabi won on behalf of her family against Ricky Marvin. So that is where in learning about this match is where the swerve comes in, and where the description is slightly misleading.
Misleading. Yeah, well, the Apache versus OGT feud was all about those crazy swerves and bumps, and it was some of my favorite stuff coming out at that period of AAA.
Yes. And the Apache family, I mean, they are just historic. And so this too, for them to have so much on the line, I think it was likely a very feel-good moment when they won the Trios Championship. Now, I was not able to locate this online, knowing that it was at a live show. Even though it was 2017, by at that time they were filming lots of things. I have not yet been able to find this online, but I'm a big fan of the Apache family. Like, they are very much that baby face family stable that is a little old school, but also works so well for them. And really as an intergender match as well. I mean, they do it better than nobody else can. That is what I picked for this week in Lucha Libre history. And as Dusty mentioned, you can find this day in Lucha Libre history at luchacentral.com. Well, Brendan, though, I mean, while we're at it, why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners what else they can find at luchacentral.com?
I got you on this. If you're listening to this, you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it's time to do it. Luchacentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. Place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And on top of all of this, it's free. I mean, come on, you can't be free, especially right now. Free. Lucha Central, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Up next, we have This Week in Impact Wrestling, and this match itself was kind of an effect of what happened last week, and that's a three-way match to determine the new number one contenders for the X Division Championship. We had Black Taurus, Chris Bay, and Ace Austin facing each other. And this is because they won. They were on the winning side of a 6-man tag during last week's episode, which was a really great match. And really what you saw during this match is Chris Bay and Ace Austin working together to try and tackle and mitigate the size and technicality of Black Taurus. which they had some challenges with. So there was that teamwork dynamic, but ultimately Taurus really overcoming those efforts by Chris Bay and Ace Austin pretty early on and showing his strength. I mean, again, I've been really enjoying Black Taurus's work at Impact, especially in the X division, because of his versatility, in his work. But ultimately, he is a strong man. He is the strongest one in the entire X division at this point. But he can pull a slam or a flip at any given notice, at a moment's notice. And I loved the work he did with Ace Austin, especially because he really overpowered him, and the way that Ace sold it, I thought was fantastic. But ultimately, Ace Austin helped move the momentum around. Some of that was due to a really good drop kick against Taurus, and then ultimately some help from Madman Fulton, who distracted and tripped up Chris Bay, and Ace Austin getting the win. So Ace Austin is now your new number one contender for the X Division Championship and will be facing TJP. Also a reminder that Impact Wrestling has their Impact Plus card pay-per-view Sacrifice happening Sacrifice. I was looking at No Surrender, which is also February 13th, but we're in March 13th. March 13th, Impact Plus special, Sacrifice. And that is also where we're going to see TJP versus Ace Austin for the X Division Championship. So that is going to be great. And talking about crossover, we are going to see the Impact World Tag Team Championships on the line. The Good Brothers versus Finn Juice, from New Japan, David Finlay and Juice Robinson.
Such a cute name.
Yeah.
It's adorable. It's adorable. But, yes, again, X Division. I mean, if you are looking for, something different and unique and, really great wrestling on a weekly basis, Impact X Division is where it's at. And I've just loved Black Taurus in this role, in this edition. His new role in Decay as well. I mentioned it when he first came. It's perfect because he doesn't need to speak. And he can just be a monster. And he has this, and it's just, it's just, when you have a shiny new toy on the block, I feel like Taurus is that, and then they're just gonna mess it up and it's gonna break my heart. But in the moment, I'm happy. I'm gonna just live in the moment.
Fun stuff. Yeah, don't think about the possible downsides. Just think about how awesome it is right now to watch this big bull man run Chris Bay over.
Yeah. I like it. I dig it. Impact Wrestling every Tuesday. Watch it. Up next, we have, a huge, huge week in Ring of Honor, Brendan. Let's just get into it.
Oh, this was such a good episode of Ring of Honor. Another show that is bringing you pretty good, consistent wrestling action. I'm emphasizing that word because that's a big thing that's going on with this week's show too. So in the opening match, LFI, La Facción Ingobernable, were going for the World Tag Team titles against the Foundation, Jonathan Gresham and Jay Lethal, and this was in a Pure Rules tag match. There haven't been many of those, but because the Foundation had it, they dictated the terms and they made this a Pure Rules match. So you had Dragon Lee and Kenny King representing LFI, and they very firmly started off as heels. They were messing with the rules, like every time there was something going on. If the ref gave them any sort of direction, they made a big old to-do about it, like over-exaggerated grabbing of the tag ropes to make a tag so that the referee knew they were legal. Kenny King at one point slaps the taste out of Jonathan Gresham and holds the open palm up to show that he did not punch anybody. And the referee is like, okay, I guess, so like they were totally messing with the rules the whole time. I do, in case any of my referee co-workers are listening, or any of my instructors, I do want to give a special shout out. They did use the tag ropes in there, which is a thing that when I'm watching tag team matches now, I always bristle over. I can rely on like 3 teams to use them consistently. So anytime there's a pure match, I always am happy to see that the tag ropes are being used. This went the way that you're kind of expecting. The foundation would take control using pure tag team stuff. They would go head to head. I mean, obviously Dragon Lee and Kenny King are both very good technical wrestlers, but they were so intent on cheating that they often would get caught by a move while they were trying to set up their next cheating spot. And so they would get back and forth for a little while. The LFI used all of their rope breaks. They even used one of their punches. I'm pretty sure that Gresham took every single punch and slap. I think they were really focusing on him because he was the one that was getting the most upset by the rules being broken. And eventually it does end with Jay Lethal diving to the outside, missing his opponent, but instead hitting the manager, Amy Rose. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I had the last name right because I keep saying Amy Lee, who is a totally different person, and that's not. Yeah, Amy Rose.
Yeah, you're combining Amy Rose and Dragon Lee. Totally understandable. But yeah, Amy Rose as the manager and accompanied them out to the ring as always, and so very unfortunate timing.
It was very unfortunate timing. So Jay Lethal was very distracted while that was going on. The referee was distracted, and Dragon Lee took that opportunity to do a very stiff looking cross right across Gresham's face, which seemed to knock him out cold. Got the 1, 2, 3. They got the win. The referee missed the closed fist, which would have been an automatic disqualification because that was the second one of the match, even though I'm of the camp that any blatant use of the fist should be a DQ, not just the second one. But this kind of is setting up what I've been talking about. It's going more and more into this war between your LFI, who's very much their personas. Don't tell us what to do. Don't give us the rules are not there for us. They're there for other people. Yes. We're going to do what we want, how we want, when we want. And even Dragon Lee seems to have really embraced this mindset at this point. Mm-hmm. And the Gresham in a post-match interview was just absolutely livid, and he declared that this was war. So I don't know what he thinks that means, but it sounds like that's what's happening. Is we're going to get at least various members of the foundation, if not more of the pure roster in general, going after various people in LFI, and I'm so on board for all of this.
So on board. I love that. And it's a good utilization of the pure rules in a way that, when LFI came into it, it was like they were at the disadvantage. How were they going to follow those rules? And ultimately you knew they weren't. That was also going to be a utilization or played around in the storyline. And I think it was actually a good way of doing it, because then it just continues to emphasize, the value of the pure rules and why the foundation are just so adamant towards it. So, whether that means we see more pure rules, matches for the tag championships or something else, or, however, it's definitely some pretty good storytelling, really focusing on wrestling.
Yeah.
Ring of Honor has always been good at that, and now they're coming back to it. They're finally coming back full circle. And it is because of the utilization of good lucha libre. I mean, if we're really trying to go back full circle to earlier, WWE, take a note. Listen a little bit.
Look at what some of these, I'm going to use air quotes around this word, smaller companies are doing with their luchadors. MLW is doing great things with their luchadors. Impact is doing fantastic things with the 2 luchadors they have on their roster. There's still the highlights of every show ROH has a really deep, robust luchador-based roster, and they're doing fantastic programming. It is often my pick for the best single hour of wrestling every week. Like, I'm going to let you in a secret. WWE never wins the best single hour. Any 1 hour of Raw is just terrible.
Always.
Preach.
But yeah, so you started here. You had LFI winning the tag team championships then, and basically firing, I won't say the first shot in the war, but the biggest shot so far in the war that's about to erupt between the Foundation and LFI. And then we went to Rush in a heavyweight title match against Shane Taylor, and they set this up again too with Kenny King kind of having mixed feelings because he used to run with Shane Taylor, and he's talking to them backstage about maybe not using the chair, and Amy Rose makes a big point about no, we're gonna use the chair if we need to use the chair, and they all kind of left angry, and we're talking, making him think about this. And so you had Kenny King on commentary. You didn't have anybody else coming out with Roosh, but Kenny King was there on commentary. So they were very clearly going to play up a little bit of that tension. You had Shane Taylor, so you have two giant men. And I didn't time it. I should have gone back and timed it, but I think it was a good 5 to 7 minutes before they even got in the ring. They just threw each other around outside they started in the ring for like a half a minute, but then went right outside. They were brawling with each other, throwing each other into the guardrails. They made a point of mentioning that those were weighted guardrails that they were using with 50 pounds of sand, yet you would see these two men collide with those things while running at full speed, and they would move. So, Rush things. He had the cables. He was whipping Shane Taylor. They were slamming each other into everything that wasn't nailed down, and most of the things that were. It was a very physical brawl that they were clearly exhausted by the time they got into the ring. And then they did more of their great stuff in the ring, because both of those guys, to the point of earlier, they're both guys that are really big, but they're really fast. They can move. The height that Roosh gets on a drop kick is phenomenal. Like, only Marco Corleone really rivals it, in my opinion. But and then Shane Taylor is, he's a big guy, but he moves fast, and he can technically wrestle you. Like, it's a fantastic matchup either way. They went back and forth quite a ways. They got to the point where they were both basically lying in the ring, exhausted, and I don't remember what happened with the ref, why he was not on point with this, but Bestia came out with a chair, and Kenny King left the commentary booth to take the chair away from Bestia, and I think the ref was maybe trying to get Bestia escorted out of the ring, but then Kenny King just takes the chair and hits Shane Taylor with it. Mm-hmm. So Shane Taylor is basically, because they've already done the story of, they've done like 30 to 40 minutes of work, they're exhausted, and he's just been hit over the head with a chair. So it was pretty easy to hit the bull's horns and get the 1, 2, 3, and that was the retention. But the bigger story there is that Kenny King is left the other history behind. He's fully invested with LFI. The part that I found interesting, which was building up to more of this story that we've been talking about, is the commentators kept saying that Kenny King broke the code. They kept saying he broke the code, which, if you go back to it, that's what the pure wrestling is all about too. Like the code of honor, the handshake, and all of that. So, in an indirect way, they're still fueling this story that LFI is going to do what they want when they want, and that just is going to add fire to this whole war that's about to erupt. And again, I'm super excited for it. But also that means that LFI now have almost all the gold. Only the 6-man belts they don't have. Shane Taylor's faction got those 2 weeks ago off of Mexa Squad. They've got everything else. So they are the most decorated group in ROH right now, which means that if the Foundation wants to come after them, they're probably going to have to play by LFI's rules this time around. I mean, there's so many good things that can come out of this. It's and Kenny King and Dragon Lee are technically both still contenders for the pure title in the singles division, so they could go after that singles belt too. So I did miss that. The first one I said they had all the gold. I forgot. The pure belt is still on Gresham.
Yeah. But still, I mean, again, you're right. There's so many different options and opportunities that can come from this. So again, I think it's really ROH getting back to its roots in good storytelling with good wrestling.
Quality.
Quality wrestling. Who's doing that? The luchadors are doing it. And of course the pure wrestlers too. And I love that. I love it is such a clash of styles. Mm-hmm. And that's really what the story is about too. And I love it.
So technically the luchadors aren't doing the good wrestling.
That's true. I mean, they're doing good wrestling. They're just not doing the better wrestling.
They're not doing They're your Texas luchadors, to use your analogy. That the Texas or California, they are very much the Texas style luchadors. They're going to beat you to death with a barbed wire baseball bat and everything that's not nailed down ringside. But still, they're going to do all of that lucha stuff. You're still going to see all the other, but it's going to be a lot more brutal and a lot less technical as a whole. But I mean, even the worst technical luchador is still a significant match on the mat for just about anybody in America these days. It's back to Raquel Gonzalez. She's a power wrestler, but she's got grapple skills.
Yes, absolutely. Well, our final story of the day involves New Japan. So, Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, New Japan this week, we had the 49th anniversary show, and at the show, we had Jeff Cobb defeating Satoshi Kojima in the first round of the New Japan Cup 2021. This was a fantastically worked match. Kojima is a legend, but this match was really where Jeff Cobb has ascended to his next level. Like, this guy is going to be a huge star in New Japan. I implore everybody to check this match out. It sets a higher bar than I could have expected for the entire tournament and the first match. And so it's incredible. Jeff now goes on to face Evil on March 11th. So stay tuned to a future episode for that review. Maybe it may not be next week. It may be 2 weeks from now that we have the review. But stay tuned. We will definitely cover that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it for another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to go to luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. You can also follow Lucha Central on social media at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram, and at Lucha Central.com on Twitter. Check out the YouTube page. Again, that's where our interview with Zenshi will be, on Lucha Central's YouTube page. And of course, some great interviews from Denise Salcedo and other members of the Lucha Central.com team. And well, while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, can you let our listeners know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy, and I'm on Instagram at Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's the numbers 321. T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and I'm especially on Twitter.
Yes. And me, Miranda Morales, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the #Miranda, spelled out. Don't forget, if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast streaming platform like Spotify, iTunes, Podbay, iHeartRadio. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. So go ahead and subscribe, and that way you get a notification every time a new episode of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast drops. You can rate and review us, so go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and leave a message and review us. Let us know what you think. Give us some feedback on some of our topics, things that you think we should talk about, whatever it is. Make sure you leave us that review. We love to hear your feedback. We love to hear from our listeners. We so greatly appreciate it, and we do it all for you guys. So let us know how we're doing. For Dusty Murphy and Brendan Barr, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you all so much, and we will be back next week.
Respetable público, lucharán a 2 de 3 caídas sin límite de tiempo.